Good afternoon. Today's book is The Native Americans, the Indigenous People of North America. Editorial consultant Colin F. Taylor, technical consultant William F. Servant, Smithsonian Institution. Publisher Salamander Books, 1991. In this book are impressive black and white and color photographs from the Museum of Natural History. They show and reveal on several Native American tribes and their way of life. These artifacts reveal how they adapted to living in various environments. And I will show you pictures and some of the pages from the book after I get through with the talking part of this. And you'll be able to see the kind of tools, the clothing that they use. It's a very intriguing book here. It's just amazing. These photographs dated from 1850 to 1940 and show the pride and tradition among the indigenous Native Americans. Chapters include the Southwest, the Plains, the Plateau and Basin, California, the Northwest Coast, the SubArtic, the Arctic, and the Northeast. Now each section has an illustrated map and key where these indigenous people lived and had information on the language, the kind of crops that they grew, whether they were hunters, gatherers, the type of construction on their huts. Was trees used? They also did basket weaving. The type of clothing were likely cotton and muslin. A couple of times I ran across the name or flannel, like flannel shirts and pants like that. And the tools. There's so much information. I'm just overwhelmed by it all. I just love it. Tools like an owl, AWL, which looks like a wooden handle, a straight wooden handle, but at the end it's like a needle almost. It's that thin. It's just carved out that thin, and they use that to do sewing, and it's just phenomenal that they would even think of that back then. But anyway, the Southwest indigenous people, known for their pottery and weaving, they planted corns, beans, and squash. In addition, they were hunters, and they lived in adobe homes made of stone and adobe. Now, some of these tribes are Mojave, Hopi, Navajo, Apache, and Yaguri. The Plains people, known for its sun and wind and grass and semi-desert type terrain, these tribes in the area were Ojibwe, Sioux, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Osage, Blackfeet, and they all lived in teepees covered by canvas. And to decorate them, they painted or used certain grounded stones and used them as paint to illustrate their teepees or decorate their teepees. Now, these in the plains, these Indians, they hunted antelope and buffalo, which dominated the region. But most of them were so big at the time that they didn't know how to capture them because they didn't have rifles or any of that stuff to to shoot. What they did though was dug deep pits, lining them with stones and all that, and they just kind of corralled them over, hoping one or two would just fall in the pit, and that's how they would take their meat, And they, when horses and guns came around to their area, then hunting became easier. But the thing is right then, at that time when they first started to, be hunters and gatherers, they needed help, and which afterwards, once they killed the buffalo, they used their furs for clothing, and they skinned it, and they made hats and things like that. So there's several illustrations explaining how a teepee is made, and they called out each things, like what poles were used, the smoke flap, decorative painting to cover the fasteners, and and what the front uh, flap of the teepee were actually, when they closed it, they used pins. Phenomenal to me. Anyway, the Plateau and Basin tribes were Shuswap, Yakama, Nez Perce, and Klamath, and Ute, just to name a few of the tribes' names. They were located near or along forest areas, mountain areas, deep canyons, rushing rivers, and they had meadowlands in abundance all over the place. I mean, that sounds like a great place to live, doesn't it? They fished for, excuse me, they fished for whitefish and trout. They had such clear waters, you could see right through the bottom of the bed from the water. They also used spears carved out of wood, of course, with hooks. And some of them had three prongs at the end, all wooden, but sharpened down so much that, they could, if they threw it hard enough, would go right to the fish. And that's how they would pick them up from the water and then put them in the baskets. They lived in lodges formed with stacking several poles together and tie them in a tripod, and then cover the frame with woven mats and cattail, or trull, as I guess. It's like a hair, and they would like weave them together, and then they put them on top of one another to keep them warm inside. So it's much like a teepee, a little bit different, um, which was fascinating to me. Now, the California tribes, covering every area from Death Valley to Eureka, include Pomo, Yuki, Wapaho, Chachawa, Chachilla, or Yurok. And most of those were hunters and gatherers. Some fishing, some tribes fished, and they gave a bountiful choice of food throughout the seasons, like rabbit, lizards, snakes, crayfish, turtles, even grasshoppers and snails. Not my kind of food, but hey, back then, you got to eat what you got to eat. They sold baskets and pottery to the first settlers settling in California, and they began a kind of like an exchange system amongst the travelers, or the people, settlers settling down in the area. So they exchanged their tools and their baskets and all that for tools that the settlers had, and exchanged guns and maybe wagons and a few horses, and that's so they began that cross exchange things, and which allowed them to make canoes. So that was cool. And the West Coast, known for back then for its mild climate, had rich ceremonial and spiritual life among the British Columbia coastline. And those tribes include Bella Bella, Chickanuns, Tillamook, Nishaka tribes, and salmon was a great source of food, along with a variety of fish like shellfish, plants, and roots. They used those also for their meals. And they took to harvesting and storing their food, that once they figured everything out, how to make it all last. So they stored food for months on end, which continued to give them plenty of food until the springtime came along, summer months came along, which is fine. And then they redid it again. They stocked up again for food. They used skins from sea mammals. They used their bones, their bladders were also used as tools. Trees provided material for building their homes, canoes, and baskets. Now, the SubArtic tribes during the 1850s were living in a continent in the higher areas like Canada. Most of Canada had plenty of woodlands and tundra, fish, and animals to hunt. They had so much greenery and grass. There was animals everywhere, and they were like plentiful, and which too many tribes at one time kind of lived in that area. Now, some of those tribe names are Ta'ana, Yellowknife, Chippewa, East Cree, and Begtuk. And they are all known for picking up and scooping fish. They used like a bowl type of thing where they would scoop it up, with their wooden bowls along with a long handle, or they'll use a pick like a spear again. However, they with the weather being so extreme, they were isolated and very, very lonely tribes, and sometimes they would not see another person for long periods of time. So, and also another way of fishing was that they broke the ice because it was so thick. They had to dig through the ice or use picks to dig through the ice and then go ahead and try to find ice that way. But it took a long patience in time doing that because, during the cold weather, it's hard to see down in water unless you had a light or something looking down in the water so you can see fish swimming, if at all. Now they lived in wigwams made of sewing and bark rolls created by they created shingles, like they would pile it on the top of these wigwams, and it really made it warm inside, which is pretty cool because of the weather they lived in. I mean, it was like icy and snowing all of the time. So, and to what I found interesting on their wigwams, that to make ornamental marks on their property, like their wigwams, so they know where they lived in case they got lost in windstorms, snowstorms, stuff like that. So the Artic tribe kind of they lived along the borders of Canada, just like the northern borders of Canada, and their tribe names were Eskimos, Caribou, Inuit, Greenland Eskimos, just to name a few. Now, needless to say, their temperatures for these Arctic tribes reach well below zero, and the village level societies were very territorial on their boundaries, and the leaders were within the families or the villages, and some of them, I think, just to stir up trouble or to give them their blood rolling, is they created havoc. They fought, they attacked each other, just because of over the simplest things on who was the best fisher. Their way of making tools were better. No, mine is better. That kind of thing. And one of the pictures I came across in this book was an Eskimo using his mouth to drill a wake in an ivory cribbage board. So he was creating this cribbage board, and to make these small little round holes in the cribbage board, he had this small little tool, and he used while he had the board in his hand, he used his mouth to keep on going round and round and round. It was an unusual kind of thing. Now, the next tribe was the Northeast. Now, they lived along the Atlantic Ocean, bordering Lake Superior, and all the way down to the end there along the coast there. Now, tribes included Powhatan. Excuse me if I'm not trying to stutter or say these words wrong, but for me it's just hard to pronounce them and be politically correct. So please excuse my stuttering on the names. Mohawk, Seneca, Ottawa, Kickapoo, and all of these tribes lived in wigwams. Now, winters for these Northeast tribes were severe, heavily forested, rain, and they were all hunters and fishermen. They hunted off otter, moose, caribou, and to do the moose and caribou, they used bow and arrows, wore decorated clothes, mostly black and red with white stitch. They liked to stand out, and they were proud of their tribe. Now, Mohawk warriors, at first glance, they used flintlock and a rifle and a hatchet. And the thing is these guys didn't wear a shirt at all. They wore buckskin breechcloth with knee-high, leather protection over the knees in the shoes, but they were completely bald with only hair showing out for the top of their head like a ponytail. And I just one look at that, I'm thinking, God, I'd be freezing my what off, um, looking at the mohawk. But they were so used to it, I guess it didn't even bother them. And the food that they used or ate was maize, squash, beans, and the early Ikawas, those villages consisted of blockages in boats. Now, they tried to keep others out, so they always tried to build around a stream or something, and where they had a moat so they could allow whoever they want in, but kept most of everybody else out. And that's how they gained control of and felt safe about their villages and where they're living. I find this all interesting. Again, like I say, I love history, and these kind of things to me are like very exciting to find out how other people lived prior to my time, but just centuries ago, how they lived, what they thought about the who ruled who, and just how they lived. Fish, hunt, gather, how they actually got married, chose a wife, that kind of thing. Or let's carry that over, how the women chose their husbands. So this what I provided for you today is just a small amount of information what is available in the book. So I want to say happy reading with the Native Americans, okay? But let me now just show you a couple of pages of the book inside. So let's see here. Now these are the maps. See how they have it so illustrated, and here's the key showing each and every tribe within this map area. There's plenty of illustrations, black and white photographs, the way they dressed here, somebody using a blow, what do you call those blow shoot things, to like with dart killers, Here, isn't this beautiful? Shows the kind of clothes that they wore, how they dressed further down the line as the centuries passed on. Look at this decorative, with the way they dressed around the necks. Plenty of beads around the neck. They were covered head to toe. Early settlers. Another of the Southwest, the maps, and each one has a number with line of all of the tribes' names. I just find this all fascinating. Look at that. Look at those bowls, okay? The tools that they used. And there's, like I said, this is very colorful illustrations. Early settlers. Again, the headdress for the bands. It's just phenomenal to me. I was reading. I read this a couple times, but I just wanted to, like I said, I wrote in my earlier notes that I just mentioned to you. They call out what each way it's tied, and see those are those links I was telling you about on the TP there. So see, and then finally you see these were the Plateau Indians. They got horses. Some of them lived in these plank type homes later on. The way they, notice this, the way they kept their weapons in here in a sheath. The shoes, little moccasin shoes, bowls. I find it fascinating. And how they dressed their horses, and the makeshift kind of like saddle that they had. There's a way another Indian dressed, showing off how when in ceremonial times that they dressed with the headdress here, and they wore their moccasins and everything like that. This is fascinating, just fascinating. Let's see what else. Oh, look at the way that they painted and they decorated it. on these blankets here. That's just phenomenal. Okay, and the pottery with a cork in it. See the cork in the bottom. And then the little box carved out with wood. They use that. More with the rugs. I find it all fascinating. Gosh, I wonder if I was living in this lifetime, because I'm just fascinated with this period of time. Well, you get the gist of everything. They have timelines. The languages that they spoke are listed here. I didn't get into that part, but because I want you to actually view the book is in its entire and just soak up the amount of information that the Natural History museum had in all of this, and the time that it took to put all of this together for everybody to read and to understand and to learn from. Now, I've visited the Natural Museum of History, and it's like you could spend a week visiting, researching, just seeing everything that they have to offer. So if you get a chance, please go. So with this in mind, I think I'm going to let you go now. But please, look at that. Those two, a couple right there. Isn't that fantastic? I'm going to leave you with the Native Americans. This book is fantastic. So until next time, this is Robin S. Garland. Happy reading. Bye-bye.